project. As Jody mentioned, I'm Sheila Cook, the rates manager for the Rocky Mountain region. I, along with Linda Katie Hoffman, the rates manager for the Upper Great Plains region, will be presenting information pertaining to the proposals during today's webinar. I will be discussing the information pertaining to LAP, and Linda will be discussing the information pertaining to the Eastern Division. In order to be consistent with data presentation, both Linda and I will be going back and forth during the presentation discussing information pertaining to the coinciding projects as presented. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the agenda we will be covering during today's webinar. First, we'll cover why this rate process is needed. We will provide an overview of the charge components. We will then go over the results of the 2016 power repayment studies for both Pick-Sloan and FRIARC. Then we will discuss the details of the rate proposals for both LAP and Pick-Sloan Eastern Division. We'll go over the proposed process, public process schedule, and our contact information, and then we'll wrap up with a question and answer session. Before we begin, Teresa Plant, our Chief Public Affairs Officer, will discuss some logistics regarding today's webinar. Teresa?
Thank you, Sheila. So everyone knows this webinar will be recorded. All phones have been muted for this purpose. Questions may be submitted at any time by clicking on the chat button located in the webinar control box on your screen and typing your question. Questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. Be sure your question is sent to Teresa Plant. If you entered the audio pin when you joined, you can raise your hand by clicking on the Raise Your Hand button, also in your webinar control box. At the end of the presentation, I will unmute your phone so you can ask the panel your question verbally. If you did not hear an audio pin, you will not be able to ask your question over the phone. If you have technical difficulties during this webinar, unfortunately, we will be unable to assist you today. As mentioned, the webinar is being recorded and will be made available in about 1 week on the region's websites. We'll try to keep the webinar to no more than 2 hours, but we have reserved the webinar until 3:30 p.m. Mountain Time, so if we need the additional time, we have it. That's all I have, so let's go ahead and get started. Sheila, I'll turn the time back over to you.
Okay, thank you, Teresa. Okay, we'll jump right in. As far as the need for the rate process, we have 4 main issues we plan to address. First, we need to adjust the Pick-Sloan drought adder component to 0, as the drought-related costs are projected to be fully repaid in 2018. Then we need to adjust the base components for both Pick-Sloan and FRIARC to represent the present annual and capital cost, which requires a public process. In addition, the Pick-Sloan Eastern Division is proposing to remove the 5% voltage discount. And lastly, both Eastern Division and LAP are proposing rate schedule changes relating to the sale of surplus products. Now we will discuss the charge components of the firm power rate. Before we get into the actual charge components, we want to show you how the rate structures work. As demonstrated by the box on the left, there are 2 separate power repayment studies. The Pick-Sloan Missouri Basin program shown in green and the Fryington, Arkansas project shown in blue. The middle box shows the revenue requirements from each of those power repayment studies. As you will see, the Pick-Sloan revenue requirement is broke out between Eastern Division, shown in green, and the Western Division, shown in blue, and the FRIARC revenue requirement that comes over as a single requirement, also shown in blue. The Pick-Sloan revenue requirement assigned to the Eastern Division, in green, makes up the Pick-Sloan Eastern Division rate, as shown in green in the third box on the right. The Pick-Sloan revenue requirement assigned to the Western Division is added to the FRIARC revenue requirement to create the Loveland area projects rate, as shown in the blue bubble on the bottom right. The FRIARC project and the Pick-Sloan Western Division were operationally and contractually integrated in 1989 to form the Loveland area project. We want to point out that during this presentation, we've tried to use a color distinction so that the slides in green will be those pertaining to the Eastern Division, and those in blue will pertain to the Loveland area projects. Slides that are shown with a white background are either methodologies and/or issues that pertain to both projects. In January of 2008, both Pick-Sloan Eastern Division and the Loveland area projects published rate orders with revenue requirements identified by two components, a base component shown in the bottom box and a drought adder component shown in the box on top of the base box. The base component is designed to cover annual operating expenses, capital additions and replacements, interest on such investments, inflationary costs, normal timing purchases associated with hydro generation operations, and transmission costs for firm deliveries. The drought adder, which is designed to recover dollars associated with drought, including purchase power and interest on the drought debts. This component can be adjusted annually by up to 2 mills or through a public process. It's important to note that both projects have a power repayment study that solves for a single composite rate that recovers costs from both components. This concept was adopted to allow us to isolate the base costs of the project from the expenses brought on by drought periods. It was designed to be flexible enough to allow for the drought component to go up while incurring drought expenses and back down when those expenses had been repaid. It's important to note that even after the drought-related costs are repaid and the drought adder component is brought down to zero, as we're going to be proposing today for this rate adjustment, the drought adder component will still be a part of the individual rate design. It will just have no dollars assigned to it until such time that we start accumulating drought costs again. Now we'll move on to discuss the specific charge components of each project. Starting with the Loveland area project, the current annual revenue requirement shown here in the top box is $74.6 million. It's made up of revenue requirements from Pick-Sloan, from FRIARC of $15.3 million and a revenue requirement from Western Division Pick-Sloan of $59.3 million. Going to the middle box, you'll see the drought adder component in effect right now is $13.6 million, which comes from the Pick-Sloan Western Division only, as the FRIARC drought component was brought to zero during our last rate process, as FRIARC did not actually incur any drought deficits and is not projecting any future non-timing power purchases. In the last box, the base component is $61 million, $15.3 million from FRIARC and $45.7 from the Western Division. Each component is allocated equally between capacity and energy. The total of the base and drought adder energy allocations equals the total energy rate, and the total of the base and drought capacity allocations equals the total capacity rate. Now we'll add the proposed revenue requirements to the slide as shown on the right. you'll see that the proposed overall annual revenue requirement is decreasing to $64.1 million, which is an approximate $10 million increase or a 14% decrease. The drought adder component is going from $13.6 million to 0, and the base component is increasing approximately $3 million to $64.1 million. $13.3 million comes from the Fry Art project, and $50.8 million comes from the Pick-Sloan Western Division. We will discuss the details of these changes later in the presentation. Now I'll turn it over to Linda to discuss the product components for Pick-Sloan Eastern Division.
Thank you, Sheila. I'm Linda Katie Hoffman. I'm the rates manager for the Upper Great Plains Regional Office in Billings, Montana. My group and my staff does the Pick-Sloan Missouri Basin overall study, and we work with Sheila's group down in Rocky Mountain to come up with the charge components for the Pick-Sloan Missouri Basin program overall, as well as do the rates for the Pick-Sloan Missouri Basin Eastern Division and the components that I'm going to discuss with you in the next few slides. As Sheila alluded to in her slides, we also have what we call a 50-50 rate design, where we split our charges between our demand rate and our energy rate. 50% is recovered in each component. So if you look at the slide that's up there right now, where we have a drought adder component of 68.3 and a base of $214 million, with a total revenue requirement of $282.7 million with our current rates today, half of that is recovered by our demand rate and half of that is recovered by our energy rate. So as we go forward into the next slide, over on the left, you'll see our current 2017 revenue requirement that I just talked about, the $282.7 million, comprised of our base and our drought adder components. They're shaded out. What we're moving to is we're proposing an annual revenue requirement for the Pick-Sloan Eastern Division of $230 million, so it's a decrease of about 19%. The base happens to be increasing about 7%, going up from $214 million up to $230.1 million. But the overall revenue requirement for the Eastern Division of Pick-Sloan is proposed to be going down, so that's a really big move for us. Go on to the next slide. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about the power repayment study information and why the rate is changing. So I'm going to talk about the Pick-Sloan Missouri Basin power repayment study. I'm going to start with the 2016 power repayment study, and how that study closed out is what is moving us into this rate adjustment that we're going into now. Our current study for 2016, we made a $110 million payment towards our drought deficit. That $110 million paid off what we still owed on a payment that was due in 2017, so essentially ahead of time, a year ahead of time, we paid off the 2017 deficit, and we applied the balance of that $110 million towards what we are owing in 2018. So that is ahead of schedule by almost 2 years. We still owe $113 million of the drought that we had accumulated in the from 2001 to 2009, and we hope to be paying that off early, as you'll see on the next slide. But in 2016, we also had a required payment that was a 2.5% interest expense that was $54 million, and that was for the United States Corps of Engineers investment, and that was original investment for when the facilities were originally built. 2020 still is the pinch point for our study, and so that's what's setting the rate at the rate that it is today. Right now, our study in 2016 is solving at 24.29, which is quite a bit lower than it was last year. Last year was solving at 28.54. So we're paying off a lot of drought debt, and with that happening, it's causing our overall composite rate for Pick-Sloan to be reducing, and that's what's causing this rate adjustment that we're going into. So why don't you go to the next slide, Judy. This is a graphic many of you are very familiar with, where it's fondly known as the mountain chart. The graphic shows the severe drought that we were experiencing in the Pick-Sloan, Missouri Basin program from 2001 to 2009. The green shows the shortfalls in the rate that we went into the drought, when we were going into the drought, and the purple on the right shows how these shortages have been repaid since 2010 and where we are today. So you'll see there's dark purple, that's what drought deficits have been paid off. There's a light purple section over on the right, and that happens to be what we made in 2016, that payment that we were talking about of $110 million. And then the unshaded area that's just under the dotted line is the $113 million that we still have left to pay on that mountain chart of drought. Okay. When we repay these drought costs, we also, as it gets paid off, we have to do something about the rate, because we have those two components, the base and the drought adder. Well, many of you didn't think the drought adder would probably ever go away, and it seemed like for a long time that it wouldn't, but I'm here to tell you it is. And in 2017, we did reduce the rate, and it went down to 28.25 mils per kilowatt hour as overall composite. And now we're proposing taking it down even more in 2018, and the overall Pick-Sloan rate would be in 24.29 mils per kilowatt hour. So next I'm going to talk to you about the two rate components and how this overall decrease is being distributed between the base and the drought adder components. Basically, when the drought adder is paid off, the only revenue requirement left to cover the costs for the Pick-Sloan Missouri Basin program is the base component. So, moving on. As I stated earlier, our overall rates are solving at a lower level than what was said in 2015, and that was $33.54. We lowered that in 2017 with a process where we just reduced the drought adder, but we didn't modify the base component, and our composite rate was at 28.54 mils per kilowatt hour. Our drought adder is going to zero because it's projected to be paid off in 2018. We're planning on making that last payment in 2018 about mid-year, so paying it off a little bit early sounds good. We are paid ahead on the drought costs, and our final payment isn't technically required to be made until 2019. So just keeping our interest expenses down, paying it ahead of time is a good thing. Our base happens to be going up, and we have a new 5-year cost evaluation period, which I'll talk about on the next slide, which is comprised of our new investments or replacement costs going into the study, new O&M expenses, and as well as inflationary costs that go into the study. This is a new graphic that we haven't showed you before, but it's basically the 5-year projection window. So what we're really talking about is the difference between the last rate setting study on the top, which is the 2015 rate setting PRS, which was the last time the base component of the rate was adjusted. So what was the cost evaluation period in 2015 was 2014 through 2018, and that is shown in the, I think on your screen it may look orange. It might look, on my screen it actually looks sort of a rust color. So that was what was the cost evaluation period in the 2015 study. Part of this is now actually historical costs, and the new cost evaluation period for the 2018 rate is in the second arrow section down below, and with that new cost evaluation period, it starts in 2017 and rolls out until 2021. In this graphic, the cost evaluation period, as I said, should be either a rust color or an orange color. It's the middle section of both of those arrows. Since our last base adjustment in 2015, we've added 3 years that have rolled into our actuals, and we've had an additional 3 years roll into the cost evaluation period out on the front. These costs include operation and maintenance costs for Western Area Power, the Bureau of Reclamation, as well as the Corps of Engineers for operation of the transmission system, and as well as all of our generation facilities. This includes interest and expense on the capital investments as well as replacements too. The Pick-Sloan Missouri Basin program runs a 100-year study. We do not include inflationary costs out past the 5-year cost evaluation window. This is shown in the yellow on the far right of those two arrows. In the old study back in 2015, it was 2019 through 2023. In the new study going out, it starts in the year 2022. So next I'm going to go to Sheila, and she's going to go over the FryArc power repayment study.
Thank you, Linda. As far as the FryArc PRS for 2016, we wanted to point out that it does include the fiscal year 18 work plans, but it also incorporates updates to the capital costs related to the Mount Albert rehabilitation project. There are no outstanding deficits in the FryArc study. 2034 continues to be the pinch point for FryArc, and the coupon rate used for replacements and additions is 4.429%. The study is solving with a revenue requirement of $13.3 million, which is approximately 13% lower than the approved $15.3 million revenue requirement that we have today. This is a graph to just take a quick look at what the FryArc revenue requirement has been since the last rate adjustment in 2015. As you'll see, the revenue requirement of $15.3 million has stayed steady from 2015 through 2017, as we did not do a base rate adjustment this year. And we're proposing that the rate go down, or the revenue requirement go down to $13.3 million, or the 13% decrease. Now we will transition into the regional rate proposal discussion. I'll begin that discussion with the Loveland area projects proposals. This graph shows the composite rate decreases since the approved 2015 rate of 14.41 mils per kilowatt hour. We held that rate from 2015 to 16. In January of 2017, with the reduction of the Pick-Sloan drought adder component, the lap composite rate decreased 12% to 36.56 mils per kilowatt hour. And then for this proposal, the lap rate will experience a decrease of just over 14%, bringing the composite rate down from 36.56 to 31.44 mils per kilowatt hour. Thank you. So why the changes to the base component for FryArc? Sorry for the delay. We were experiencing some technical difficulties. Anyway, why the changes to the base charge component for FryArc? The base is decreasing. We do have the new 5-year cost evaluation period that Linda described in her previous slide. The FryArc study, like she said, we have that same situation where we have new O&M investments and inflation coming into the study. But in FRIARC's case, the base is actually decreasing due to a couple of factors. We tried to capture those other factors here. When we look at the changes that have occurred between 2013 and 2034, which is the pinch point of the FRIARC study, when we compare that to the 2015 rate setting PRS, we see that the O&M expenses actually have decreased an average of $300,000 per year. And the ancillary services revenue has increased an average of approximately $1.1 million per year. And this change is mostly related to the regulation and voltage control revenue that we receive. And since we did a rate adjustment for transmission and ancillary services that became effective in October of 2016, those changes in rate designs are actually being captured in the 2016 power repayment study. These changes net to an average net revenue increase of approximately $1.4 million a year, and this helps offset the firm-wide revenue requirement. To summarize lapsed revenue requirements, we have a summary chart here that shows the LAP revenue requirements, the current rates in the middle, and then we have the proposed rates and the percent change. You can see that the revenue requirement is going from $74.6 million, decrease of about $10 million, to $64.1, a 14% decrease. When we look at the individual revenue requirements of the project, you'll see that, again, FRIARC's is decreasing 13%, and the portion of the revenue requirement from Western Division Pick-Sloan is decreasing approximately 14%. And here's a table that shows the current versus the proposed rates. I'm not going to completely read this slide, as there's a lot of numbers here, but what we want to point out is that the composite rate is going from a seasonal rate of 36.56 mils per kilowatt hour to 31.44 mils per kilowatt hour for an overall decrease of 14%. Then this slide shows how the LAP rates are broken down into the base and drought adder components. As you'll see by the first box, we have the base component, which actually makes up the entire charges for both capacity and energy, since the drought adder component for Western Division is now going to 0. So the two boxes, the base and the total charge, are now the same number for each, the firm capacity and the firm energy. Now we'll turn it back over to Linda to discuss the Eastern Division rate proposal.
Thanks, Sheila. Now we'll talk about the Pick-Sloan Eastern Division rate proposal. I'm going to show you several slides that are complementary to what Sheila did, only they'll be for the Pick-Sloan Eastern Division rates. So as we move over, this graphic shows the Pick-Sloan Eastern Division composite rate as it has decreased since the last approved public process rates in 2015. Our rate was $33.25. That rate went into effect in 2010. It stayed in effect until January 1 of 2017, where we reduced that through our drought adder process and took it down to 28.25 mils per kilowatt hour. We are proposing through this rate process to lower that Eastern Division composite rate down to 24.00 mils per kilowatt hour. Our proposal to reduce the drought reduces the drought adder component, as Sheila stated earlier, to 0 in 2018. This is an additional increase over the recent one that happened in 2017. It brings the rate down about 15% on the composite, and we're proposing that it takes place in January of 2018. I wanted to show this slide because it's much more visually impacting than the tables that actually have the rates in them. This line, for those of you who have been around for the last 10, 15 years, I didn't think it would ever come down, but it is actually coming down, and it's coming down to a reasonable number. Moving on. This table is a representation of our firm power revenue components and the associated reduction in the proposed rates for 2018. On the left is our current composite rate of 28.25 mils with the 50-50 rate design that I discussed earlier, and the revenue requirement on the right is the proposed 24 mil per kilowatt hour rates revenue requirements. On the right, the proposed revenue requirement for firm power is decreasing from 247 million down to 209.8 million, which is about a 15% change. The firm peaking power revenue requirement is decreasing from 25 million down to 20.3 million, which is about a 19% change. And then when you add our firm revenue requirement as a whole for the current 2017 rates, has a voltage discount, called a 5% voltage discount, and it's in there at 10.7 million, bringing our total firm revenue requirement today of $282.7 million. On the right, we are proposing that we remove the 5% voltage discount revenue from our proposal, and that would bring our total firm revenue requirement in this proposal down to $230.1 million, which would be a 19% decrease to our overall firm revenue requirement. Moving on. Okay. On this slide, it shows the revenue requirements converted into our proposed capacity and energy rates. As I stated earlier, our capacity and energy rates are recovered by a 50-50 demand and energy recovery, so half of the revenue requirements recovered by each component. Our gross Eastern Division revenue requirement, in addition to the peaking revenue requirement, is going down from $282.7 million to $230.1 million. If you look at this slide, there's an asterisk up there by the $230.1 million number. And that's to highlight that this $230.1 million number does not include the revenue requirement of the voltage discount piece that I showed on the earlier slide of $7.3 million. This slide shows the proposed rates for firm and firm peaking power utilizing our 50-50 rate design, and it also, as a key point, does not include the voltage discount revenue requirement that was on there. This is a slide similar to what Sheila showed you on the proposed charge components for the base and the drought adder. The base component is shown in the gray area. The drought numbers are shown in the orange or rust color, depending on how you're viewing it on your screen, and the totals for the firm capacity and firm energy and firm peaking are shown on the right in the light blue. With the proposed decrease to the revenue requirement, please note that the drought component, which is shown in the yellow or orange boxes on your screen, is going to zero. So the rest of our revenue requirement needs to be recovered by the base component. These dollars are going up, so the base overall as a total is going up about 7%, and they are shown, those rates are shown in in the gray boxes on the left. On the right again is the total charges for the rate schedules and what you would see on your power bill. As Sheila alluded to earlier, we're not getting rid of the drought component either. The component's still going to be there. It will still show up on your power bills. It'll just have a zero charge associated with it. So this is a summary for the firm charges we're proposing in our rate adjustment. Next, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that component piece that we had talked about taking out of our total Pick-Sloan Eastern Division revenue requirement, the 5% voltage discount. What is the 5% voltage discount? Historically, the 5% voltage discount was allowed for customers taking deliveries at transmission voltage who had provided facilities that resulted in a cost savings to the government. This goes back well before the formation of WAPA, or Western, and goes all the way back to the days of electrification on the project and the Bureau of Reclamation. Our proposal will eliminate this 5% voltage discount that is added into the annual revenue requirement for the dollars lost due to providing the voltage discount. I want to be clear, first off, not every customer in the Pick-Sloan Eastern Division gets the discount, and for those customers that do not, and for those customers that do, not all of their points of delivery get the discount. Today, roughly 237 of our customers get a discount on a portion of their delivery points. We have about 35 customers, firm power customers, that do not get any voltage discount on any of their delivery points. As I discussed earlier, our past rate design has 3 revenue requirement pieces: firm power, peaking power, and a 5% voltage discount revenue. From those pieces, we have a firm power composite rate. That rate on this slide is $237.4 million. The proposed 2018 composite is based on the $209.8 million firm power revenue requirement divided by the system energy of 8,742 gigawatt hours, which results in our composite rate of 24.00 mils per kilowatt hour. This is a composite rate we've frequently referenced during any of our rate discussions. However, the voltage discount has historically been a piece of the overall revenue requirement that is incorporated during the Pick-Sloan Eastern Division rate design. The voltage discount dollars need to be recovered to meet the full Eastern Division revenue requirement. Without including it in the rate design, we would under-recover our revenue requirement. Today, about 70% of the firm energy deliveries receive this discount, and about 30% do not. The 30% would pay an effective composite rate higher than the 24 mils we're proposing. The 2018 estimated voltage discount revenue requirement shown up above, or shown on the slide here, is $7.3 million a year. Therefore, the effective rate for the 30% that don't get the voltage discount is higher. It's approximately 24.83 mils if we were to continue to use this discount. Calculations for both of those composites, the 24 mils and the 24.83 mils for the effective composite rate for those that don't get a voltage discount, are shown on this slide. This next slide shows the Pick-Sloan, Missouri Basin Eastern Division voltage for the voltage discount and the proposed 2018 revenue requirements with that voltage discount removed. You can see with circled in red, there's a 0 up there with a down arrow. When we take that $7.3 million voltage discount revenue requirement out, it reduces the total overall revenue requirement for the Pick-Sloan Eastern Division. That reduces the effective rate for all of the customers, not just those that receive a voltage discount, down to 24.0 mils per kilowatt hour. Again, that calculation is based on the firm power revenue requirement of $209.8 million divided by our energy of 8,742 gigawatt hours, which comes up with a 24 mil per kilowatt hour composite rate. Okay. So after all that discussion, which is a lot of words and a lot of numbers, you're probably just wondering what this reduction of the voltage discount actually does to you and how it affects your bill you get from Western or WAPA. On the left is a sample bill with the 2017 rates you have today for a customer that has the voltage discount on their bill. On the right is the same sample bill with the new proposed rates. They're shown in red, as well as the removal of the voltage discount. To see the individual impact that would happen to you as a customer, you will need to first take into account the lower demand and energy rates that are in red, and then remove the voltage discount you may be receiving on points of delivery you have with Western or your total bill, depending on if you get the voltage discount or not. Okay, first, this next slide, I want to highlight a couple things. Over on the right in the blue, there's some rates that are a little bit different. It's $5.50 for a demand rate and $13.60 as an energy rate. This slide depicts what our rates would look like if we didn't remove the voltage discount. So it's that effective rate that those who don't get the voltage discount would be paying, or that effective rate that everybody would pay, because if we need to recover $7.3 million, it actually raises our overall rates for everybody in Pick-Sloan Eastern Division. Okay. As you can see, our proposal is to remove the discount and lower the firm power rate. Is not a one-for-one offset. In fact, most of the customers who currently receive the discount will pay a bit more than they would if we continued to keep the voltage discount. However, by removing the voltage discount, every customer will be paying the same effective rates. In addition, removing the discount has additional benefits, which I will discuss on some following slides. I'd like to point out the difference here in the demand and energy total. It's at the lower third of this slide. There's a demand and energy total on the left, and there's one on the right. If you don't get the voltage discount, you'd be paying the $3,643.5. And if you do get the voltage discount, there'd be a less voltage discount. That's the number of 182 that's subtracted out, and so it lowers your rate, your bill for each month just a little bit. So moving on. This slide details the benefits that Western sees that can be realized by removing the voltage discount. First, ensuring consistent application of the discount for new customer points of deliveries has always been extremely difficult for WAPA, as we have to determine if a new point of delivery provides sufficient savings to justify giving the discount. Considerable staff time is used to ensure this consistency. WAPA's Upper Great Plains region, the existing points of delivery to customers can sufficiently deliver our firm power loads today and our energy obligations today. Yet the 5% voltage discount must be evaluated each time we have a new point of delivery. For many customers, WAPA provides a small portion of their total power supply. The 5% voltage discount at times impedes our ability to simplify power billing to customers that have multiple points of delivery. The existing power billing software is more complex to correctly apply the discounts to certain customers' points of deliveries and not to other points of deliveries. Discontinuing the 5% voltage discount would provide savings in the future power billing system software development and maintenance of that software. Finally, removing the discount impacts customers differently. Each customer needs to evaluate their impact based on the examples that we have provided in the 2 previous slides. Moving on. On the agenda, Sheila discussed the last item we wanted to discuss was the sale of surplus products and the rate schedules. Okay. This is not a new business practice. We are simply documenting the authority for short-term sales. Rate schedules apply to marketing and is applicable to the sale of surplus products. We're only talking short-term energy sales in Upper Great Plains region. The surplus products are available after Pick-Sloan Eastern Division Upper Great Plains has met their firm power and energy obligations. WAPA can make products available for sale, providing entities enter into separate agreements with the marketing office, which specify the terms of the sale. Terms of the surplus energy product sale cannot exceed 1 year. The charge for each product will be determined at the time of the sale based on the marketing rates. Historically, both Upper Great Plains and Rocky Mountain has sold surplus energy in bilateral energy markets, organized energy markets of RTOs and ISOs. However, there has not been a documented energy rate schedule established by Western to do so. Rocky Mountain region, as Sheila will explain next, has a rate schedule for certain surplus products but doesn't include a surplus energy. For this reason, in this public process, we are proposing adding that rate schedule for surplus products for Eastern Division, documenting the authority for making these sales. Now I will turn it over to Sheila so she can discuss the changes for the Rocky Mountain region surplus product rate schedule.
Thank you, Linda. For the Rocky Mountain region Loveland area projects, we had a new rate schedule labeled L-M1 approved under our previous rate order, WAPA 174, for the period beginning of October 2016, and it has an ending period of September 30th of 2021. As Linda pointed out, the rate schedule is formula-based, and it provides for LAP marketing to sell LAP surplus energy and capacity products, which currently are reserves, regulation, and frequency response. If these projects are available, our LAP marketing office can sell or can make them available for sale, providing that the entities enter into separate agreements specifying the terms of that sale. The charge for the surplus products is based on market rates at the time of the sale, and we also include any administrative costs necessary. As Linda pointed out, we are proposing to add short-term energy as a 4th surplus product that's offered under this rate schedule. And as Linda said, the short-term sales are sales that last no longer than 1 year. And in addition, as Linda pointed out, we currently, RMR LAP Marketing currently sells this surplus generation that is surplus to our firm energy obligations through bilateral agreements with other utilities, and we don't have a rate schedule to do so. So adding this product to the existing rate schedule will provide a documented authority to sell these short-term energy-based, will provide documented authority to sell surplus short-term energy based on market rates. Now we'll transition into what our upcoming schedule will look like if all goes as planned for this public process. First, we plan to publish 2 separate FRNs in the June timeframe, an FRN for Pick-Sloan Eastern Division and a separate FRN for the Loveland area projects. This will begin our 90-day comment period. We plan to hold public information and comment forums on July 26th in the Denver, Colorado area, and on July 27th in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We plan to publish the final rates, FRNs, in the fall and place new rate schedules in effect January 1st of 2018. Now with that, we wanted to also point out that we have our existing drought adder schedule. And for 2017, this is what it looks like. We did finalize our power repayment studies around March of this year. We used that study to determine if the base rate and or the drought adder needed to be adjusted, which it does. So where we are today is that we have the new generation projections that will be available, well, they were available on April 15th. We will perform the preliminary review of the drought adder in early summer, and we will notify customers of any estimated change to the rate, and then perform the second review of the drought adder in September and notify customers in October of any drought adder change to be implemented in January of 2018. So why we wanted to show both of these schedules is as we go through this public process, if we end up incurring any delays with getting the rate schedules published, meaning if there's any issues that we end up with at the department that cause us a delay, we can go ahead and still implement our normal drought adder schedule for 2017, which would allow us to go ahead and decrease the drought adder to 0 as we're proposing to do in the rate adjustment anyway. Now with that said, because the base still needs to increase for Pick-Sloan, we may not be able to reduce the drought adder all the way to 0 in order to accommodate for the amount that the base needed to be adjusted upwards. But in effect, the composite rate that would come out afterwards would still be the composite rate that we're proposing here in this public process. This slide is kind of a visual of those two schedules. The one on the top is the FRN schedule. We do have a little bit of a discrepancy in kind of the boxes and how it's displayed, but basically we're in the informal meeting process right now, which is ending in April. We plan to use the information that we're gathering here today through the next couple of months until we publish the proposed FRN, which we're planning to do in mid-June. That, like stated earlier, that will begin our 90-day public comment period, which should end sometime around September, with a final FRN published around the November timeframe, which would give us our 30-day notice of Deputy Secretary's approval, and then we will have the new rates in effect in January. And that is our plan going forward, but as I mentioned, if there's any delays there where we would not be able to implement these decreases in the rates through the public process, we will do it via the drought adder process that's allowed under our current published rate order. So with that, we will move on to this slide that shows more information It has the website where the Upper Great Plains rate information is posted. It also has the website for the RMR rates pages and the contact information for both Linda and I. And with that, it concludes the presentation for today. Now I'll turn it over to Teresa for the question and answer session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sheila and Linda. This closes out the recorded portion of the webinar. We'll now move into questions and answers. And as a reminder, you can ask questions in two ways. You can submit a written question by clicking on the chat button located in the webinar control box on your screen and typing your question. And you can be sure your question is sent to Teresa Plant, and I'll make sure it gets addressed. Or if you entered your audio pin at the beginning of the webinar, you can also ask your question over the phone. Click and raise your hand icon, which is located in your participant area, also in the webinar control box, and I will unmute your phone so you can ask your question verbally. Please be sure to introduce yourself before asking your question, and if relevant, please reference the slide number so we can bring that slide back up. We'll start with the written question, so bear with me as I start to pull up the written questions. When there are no more written questions, we'll move on to the verbal questions. Stand by. I'm stopping the recording.